Hey guys, it's Billy at HP Auto, and I wanted to go over a pretty interesting topic today that I think needs to be covered more. And what we're going to talk about is things that you should think about before buying your first exotic car. I've got a list of some things here, and I'm going to break them down and go over some details with you. The first thing you need to think about is what car do you want and what is your purpose? There's a lot of purposes for cars. Could be a daily driver, could be a weekend car, could be a track car, could be a collector car, could be a show car, or it could be all of those things. Now generally, it's hard to get all 5 of those and have the best of both worlds without some repercussion, so to speak, whether it's maintenance or reliability or other factors that can cover crossing up a daily driver and a track car and whatnot. So something to think about is, what is your purpose? If you're going to daily drive a Ferrari and it's a 95 355, you need to think about timing belts. And in traffic, you're going to be slipping the clutch a lot. If you want to track it, it's going to be expensive because you're going to run up the miles quicker. You're going to be changing belt. You're going to be doing fluids more often. So you got to think about those things. What is the purpose of the car and how do you intend to use it? I know we have done some buyer's guides on these cars, but I think what might be valuable for you guys is if we come up with a video where we talk about each brand and the best usage for each brand, because as a whole, most of these cars that they produce are all very similar in reliability and things to consider. But that's the first step. Figure out what your purpose is for the car and then know how to shop for that car that aligns with that purpose. Second, knowing the true cost of ownership. It's not just buying the car, right? You may buy a car and it may be the cheapest car you find online. Let's go back to the F355. I would never buy the cheapest F355 online. I'll tell you exactly why. You don't know what the maintenance life's been like unless you have records. You don't know what you're going to see next, if something's going to break, any foreseen issues or common issues. So if you're going to buy a car, know the cost, because you've got to factor these things in. Some of the things to think about, obviously insurance, maintenance, repairs, and unexpected. Insurance is much cheaper on a Porsche than is a Ferrari. Same thing for maintenance and repair. On a Porsche, it's going to be lower cost. Unexpected. McLaren, that's a great example. They have a carbon monocoque chassis. You may crack the windshield. Well, windshield could be $3,000 to $6,000 to replace, and if you're not keeping that in mind in how you're driving the car and the type of platform or train you're driving the car on, if you come in at a sharp angle with the chassis flex, now you're replacing a front windshield. Now, if you have the right insurance, it will cover that, but what if it doesn't cover that? So that's some things to think about, knowing what the true cost of ownership is. Another thing to keep in mind is how will you pay for it? Are you paying cash? Are you financing? Or are you leasing the car? There's really no right way. It's what way suits you the best. But if you're gonna pay cash for it, maybe you need to keep in mind that maybe you're in your budget that you've allocated 100 grand for the car, and that's what you just think you're gonna pay. Well, come back number 2. What if you have a maintenance or repair? So you wanna keep in mind, if cash is the way to go, is your budget going to allow for these items to come up? And I would recommend studying on the car you want to kind of have an idea on what these costs are. If you finance the car, let's say you're buying a 96 versus a 2012 or 2013. Rule of thumb is, in financing a car, 10 years old is the cutoff for most standard banks. And those banks typically have better rates because you're dealing with somebody like Chase or Ally or a small credit union. They're going to have a better rate on a car that's only 10 years old. Once you get past that 10-year-old threshold, some credit unions and national banks will work with them, but a lot of times it's a specialty lender. You're going to be looking at somebody like JJ Best or Woodside. You typically pay a higher rate, but you get a longer term, but they also want more money down. If you're going to lease a car, depending on what leasing program you use, if you're not careful with the math, you can end up paying 20 to 30% more for the car by the time you get to the end of the lease, and then you have to buy the car out. There's fees and other things to think about. So this is one you should definitely study. Next step, and could be one of the most important, is where do you buy the car? If you buy the car, let's say your options are private party, a pre-owned, a specialty dealership, and a franchise, you need to know what are the caveats. If you're buying it from private party, the car may have not been serviced. Now, you want to ask for records and whatnot, but you don't know, if let's say the car was serviced 6 months ago, in that time frame, what has happened in those 6 months? Has the car been damaged in any capacity? Has all the maintenance been done that should have been done? And is there any, possible issues that weren't there on the last service that are now present? If you're buying from just a generic pre-owned dealership, same thing could occur. A lot of these vehicles are purchased from auction or private party or trade-ins. A lot of the auction cars, if they're not looked at correctly, inspected and serviced by somebody that knows these cars, there could be some unforeseen issues. Franchise, if it's a specific franchise to the brand you're buying, you're going to pay a little bit more money, but it's been serviced by one of their trained technicians, and it's been looked at, and they have the franchise back, and it's just a little bit, more credibility. Or a pre-owned specialist. That's the category we're in. So we specialize in Porsche, Ferrari, Lamborghini, McLaren. So when we buy a car, the first thing we do is it goes over here into our detail department. We fully detail the car, and then we look at any issues cosmetically or on the interior that we as buyers, the target customer, because we own these cars too, would know that, hey, they're not gonna like this, let's look at this. Then it goes to our service shop. We have a Porsche Gold Meister technician, a McLaren Master technician, a Ferrari and Lamborghini Master Tech that work here. So they're gonna know these common issues. So when we're doing our multi-point inspection, they're gonna say, hey, we need to check the clutch life. We need to make sure the power steering pump isn't leaking on F430. We need to make sure the engine mounts are going to F430. We need to make sure the battery's good on a McLaren because of the battery type. So when you're buying the car, keep in mind that you may pay a little bit more, but it could save you a lot of money in the long term buying it from somebody that specializes in the car versus buying it from just a generic pre-owned dealership or private party with the lowest price. Because what you don't want to do is buy a car from private party or pre-owned dealership, and you get the car and 6 months later, you got a $25,000 repair bill. That's not uncommon on these types of cars. Ownership is expensive on these types of cars. Porsche is generally the lowest cost of ownership car, but just something to keep in mind. Plan for the next car. Are you gonna get another car? Are you gonna keep this car forever? Are you gonna keep it for 6 months? You gotta keep that in mind. The market's always changing. If you would have bought a 458 Speciale 12 months ago, that would have been a home run when you're trading in because the car's values went dramatically. But let's say you bought, a Porsche 911 Carrera. Maybe you bought 6 months ago at the peak of the market. Now that market's softening. So keep those things in mind. When you're buying this car, do you care about losing money? Generally, most people do, but some people are okay with more than others. Are you planning to make money on the car? What is your goal? You need to think about these things because you should always have an exit strategy on the car, unless you're just planning on keeping it forever. If it's your dream car, a collector car, or something that just means a lot to you, keep it. That's okay. But just know what your plan is. So I try to cover this in a condensed format where I gave you all the things to think about. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask, comment below. And if you like what you saw today, give us a thumbs up and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.